समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
There must be something to the sixth Mughal ruler, Mughal king Aurangzeb, and the last of the consequential Mughal rulers. They were successors after him, but they were really not consequential because everything fell apart after him. But there has to be something to him, to his legacy, reputation over the centuries that more than 300 years after his death, in fact, as we speak, 318 years after his death, his legacy still has us divided. It has us in thrall in the sense that a film just made linked to him, Chhaava, that is Aurangzeb and his imprisonment and killing and execution of the Maratha king then Sambhaji, son of Chhatrapati Shivaji. That has now been such a super hit. It's being talked about. It has caused a lot of division, debates. A lot of the TV channels have been dining out on it. Every evening they can get two from this side, two from this side, and get them to start fighting. And evidence of how polarizing Aurangzeb's legacy is that just as I am recording this, riots have gone on in Nagpur. You've seen a lot of arson riots. Nearly 30 policemen have been hurt. Fortunately, nobody's been killed as yet. And it's after a very long time that riots have taken place in Nagpur, which also happens to be the headquarters of the RSS. Now there is this issue about whether Aurangzeb's tiny grave. Aurangzeb actually was a very puritanical Muslim. To that extent, he was an unusual Mughal, while his ancestors built big mausoleums, big other buildings, also built mausoleums for themselves. Aurangzeb didn't believe in all that. Aurangzeb was very puritanical, a very nondescript grave. He died in Maharashtra, what is now Maharashtra, in the Deccan generally. He was buried in an uncovered grave at Khuldabad, which lies in the courtyard of the shrine of Sufi Saint Burhanuddin Garib, who was a follower or maybe following in the school of Nizamuddin Aulia of Delhi. There he was buried in an open grave. In the course of time, somebody made a little wall around it. I've been to that grave. If I can find those pictures that I had taken at that point, I'm happy to share them with you. I will share them with you, but I have to find them. Even his grave now is a matter of controversy. Should that be allowed to stay there or should that be pulled out? So that politics, I'm not fully equipped to talk about the complexities of that politics. So today you will see one political adda with DK Singh, Mansi Phadke, and an expert from Ahmedabad University talking about this. So please watch that to explain the intricacies of this politics, the clutter in this politics. DK Singh, our political editor, will join me a couple of minutes. Before that, let me just talk a little bit about Aurangzeb. And this is a non-historian's view because in college, I did botany, zoology, chemistry, no history, right? So I don't speak as a historian. I can refer to some books. I might have read some books, but this is a fascinating character. Just think about this. Mughals had so many rulers: Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, as they were known. They had other proper names. Aurangzeb also wasn't his proper name, but that's how he's known. His proper name was Muhi al-Din Muhammad. Now, how come Aurangzeb is still the one most talked about? So the man who founded the empire, Mughal Empire, that's Babur, is hardly talked about. His name came up a few times, or does still come up a few times in the context of Babri Masjid at Ayodhya. But just that. Akbar, who took the Mughal Empire to its glory, who united a lot of the communities in India in the second half of his reign. The first half was was the usual in the second half of his reign. He's also described by many historians and generally referred to as Akbar the Great. He's not remembered as much as Aurangzeb, the man who destroyed the Mughal Empire. Because after Aurangzeb, he was the longest serving Mughal emperor. After him, there was no Mughal empire. In fact, it had grown so unwieldy and so poor. He had driven it into such economic and military ruin. He had gone to Deccan in his zid, right? Wanting to win a war, wanted to conquer all of Deccan. It wasn't possible for him. Mostly because the Marathas opposed him. The Marathas opposed him and Marathas found a way of fighting him and ultimately defeated him. The fact is, whatever might have happened in this battle or that, or he might have captured Sambhaji and executed him in whatever manner, but the fact is that the Marathas won that war. In fact, in my book, I would say that much beyond Mao Zedong or Ho Chi Minh, it was the Marathas who demonstrated that you could use guerrilla warfare and mobile warfare much before motor vehicles were invented. Mobile warfare and guerrilla warfare to defeat what was then the largest and the most powerful army in the world, backed by the most powerful, richest economy in the world as well. And the Marathas destroyed it. So Marathas destroyed it. Aurangzeb, to that extent, is a loser. It's the greatest loser of India's medieval history because with him died the Mughal Empire. It died so conclusively that not long after him, within decades, the empire was over. His successors were fighting. The empire was shrinking. It had got balkanized by itself, within itself. And they actually needed the help of the Maratha power to stay in place in Delhi. Otherwise, why would the Marathas have to come all the way from Deccan, crossing so many rivers, even going past Delhi to fight against Ahmad Shah Abdali, the invader from Afghanistan? The third battle of Panipat, 1761. The Marathas did not rule from Delhi, but whoever ruled Delhi in the name of the Mughal Empire was totally dependent on the Marathas. That was the Maratha revenge on Aurangzeb. So once again, what was Aurangzeb? He was a remarkable figure. First of all, he lived a very long time. He died in his 89th year. He was born in 1608, died in 1707. That was a long time to live in that era when there were no vaccines to save you from disease and epidemics. There were no statins to keep your arteries running in old age, which is routine these days. And for heaven's sake, there was no penicillin. In an era where you fought so many wars and got injured so many times, no antibiotics. So, despite there not being any vaccines, any statins, any penicillin, he lived into his 89th year. He died a desolate, desperate, defeated man. And he said so. Historians have recorded this. In fact, I would not go into so many books and things because the history of Aurangzeb is such a contested history because different people have seen it from different points of view and have come up with different interpretations. But if you just look at a simple textbook style writing from Stanley Walpert, who's a South Asianist, he also wrote a definitive biography of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. That's the one I've read in some detail. He's recorded as having told his son in 1707. That's when he was fading and dying. I was alone and I go as a stranger. I do not know who I am nor what I have been doing. The fact is that he spent all his time fighting wars. He expanded the Mughal Empire, geographically made it the biggest, but also began losing it, partly because his own nobles and his own sons started fighting for power, but mostly because he ran into the Marathas. And Marathas did not collect all their armies in one place and fight him in one place. The Marathas fought mobile warfare, as I said. If Aurangzeb pushed them in the west, reached up to Satara, conquered Satara, the Marathas retreated from there and pushed east instead, because after all you have to move your forces. So if Aurangzeb concentrated in this area, Marathas went in the other area. Marathas bled him both militarily and economically. If you read the accounts of that period, it's generally believed, and Walpert also says that that in that long campaign of about 25 years in the Deccan, Mughal forces lost nearly 1 lakh soldiers, 1 lakh lives every year. That is 2.5 million people killed. 2.5 million people killed, and there were lots of civilian casualties because this had devastated the economy of the place. The Mughal capital that was set up in the Deccan, it was about 30 kilometers in circumference, right? It had about 50,000 camels, it had 30,000 elephants because you needed these to fight wars, but also to ferry your stuff from wherever you had to ferry your stuff, plus the horses, etc. Now, feeding them all had also denuded all of peninsular India of all its surplus crops, wealth, etc., etc. So it was in that situation that Aurangzeb left his empire. Stanley Walpert describes whatever victory he had in the Deccan as a Pyrrhic victory, and he says it was like a fruitless chess game warfare, and that chess game was played with him by the Marathas with great success. Now, Aurangzeb did many odd things. I don't know what to say about him. He surely wasn't a nice guy. He wasn't a nice guy, but you can say that those days, medieval times, which ruler was a nice guy? There can be arguments there also because somebody's favorite will be a nice guy, but will be the other's villain. But Aurangzeb was not a nice guy in more ways than one. First of all, he reversed the momentum from his ancestors of some kind of a compact between the large Hindu majority and the Muslim minority which was in power, the Muslim elite and the Muslim minority which was in power because Muslim rulers ruled India. He introduced jizya, for example, the tax on non-Muslims. That's the tax that Akbar had withdrawn and Jahangir and Shah Jahan had kept withdrawn. They were not stupid. They had kept it withdrawn because they thought that they had come to stay and they had to coexist with the Hindus. He reintroduced it also because he was compulsively a war fighter. He had to constantly be fighting wars. He was the most Islamic and the most Islamist of all the Mughals. In fact, I told you earlier, he was puritanical. He earned his own money for his grave by knitting and embroidery, right? And with that also, about 300 rupees that he had collected around time he died, he gave away to charity, and that's why his grave was just an open structure with no covering, with no roof at this place called Khuldabad. And now there is talk about uprooting it, that the existence of that grave is also an affront in Maharashtra. Now, how come the most famous and the most powerful loser of India's history, I'm using that expression because if you destroyed the Mughal Empire at its glory, you have to be the most famous loser of India's history. How come that character becomes so polarizing and so significant in our politics almost 320 years after his death? That is what I'm going to ask DK Singh now. So DK, you heard me, the most famous loser of India's history, the man who lost the Mughal Empire, finished the Mughal Empire. And in a way, the most famous winners of that period, the Marathas, because Marathas defeated that empire by engaging it in a chess game warfare, guerrilla warfare, which others discovered, Ho Chi Minh and Mao Zedong discovered much later. And also playing mobile warfare with him. Your strength is in the west, we go east. You shift your strength there, we go someplace else, right? With all of that, Marathas were the winners. So how come this is still such a polarizing factor, his legacy? You can see it in the success of the film Chhaava, because once again, all the sympathy that's coming out is for the victim in that case. Sambhaji, the fact, however, is that Marathas defeated Aurangzeb.
Politically, if you look at it, it's more about the fight for, I would say, Shivaji's legacy. We know what a revered figure he is in Maharashtra and Shivaji's history with Aurangzeb. We know how the people would be reacting, as Fadnavis said in the assembly, that, because of Chhaava, strong emotions were overflowing all over Maharashtra. There was anger against Aurangzeb. And that's how he said that there is a pre-planned conspiracy to do all this. Now, there are two ways of looking at it. On the face of it, it would look like, yes, it may be a continuation of the BJP's polarizing politics, which they started before the elections, from 2023 onwards. After Kolhapur violence, in fact, we heard Fadnavis talking about Aurangzeb ki aulade paida ho gayi hai. The children of Aurangzeb were here. Then after that, he was saying that, Indian Muslims are not the descendants of Aurangzeb. So all kinds of talks were happening, but then it was 2023 in the run-up to the assembly election. Now you see it continuing, and we know that it will suit the BJP because there is parallel kind of politics happening there. So you already have this contest between the two Senas over Shivaji's legacy.
I know, most people know it, but some still might not, that the Shiv Sena is not named after Lord Shiva, it's named after Shivaji Maharaj, Chhatrapati Shivaji.
So you have this contest between the two Senas over Shivaji's legacy, and then you have the BJP, which is the strongest political force in Maharashtra today. Now it had in Shiv Sena a kind of franchise which was taking care of Shivaji, and it could do the rest of the Hindutva politics. But now it is in a position where the BJP must be thinking it's the right time to take over that legacy also.
So take away Shivaji, the legacy of Shivaji also from both the Shiv Senas.
From both Sena.
That is rival Sena and partner Sena.
Partner Sena.
But why should they want to take it from partner Sena?
Because BJP's dream has been to form the government on its own. I mean, it has been there in Maharashtra for so long. Since 90s, they have come to power several times in Maharashtra, but they have always been depending on the Shiv Sena's clutches. Now it's time, probably the BJP feels it's powerful enough to take over that legacy and rule the state on its own. It doesn't need any crutch anymore.
And to dispense with the Shiv Sena.
So to dispense with the Sena, of course, because ultimately the goal is to form the government on its own. And BJP as it is, BJP just about a dozen MLAs short of a clear majority figure if it wants to dispense with the Sena. And in the long run, the BJP would like to get rid of Sena and come on its own. So that's the immediate thing. And then again, you can link that, when you have Bajrang Dal and VHP activists holding demonstrations. Now, Fadnavis as the Home Minister, the government is already there. It's not the election time. You could have just dissuaded them from doing all this. You do not want these outfits to create trouble for you when you are running the government. So there may be conspiracy theories, but this is where I am kind of contradicting myself, that it does not suit Fadnavis or the BJP to do that now. First of all, in the immediate context, see, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to Nagpur on the 30th. So he is going to lay the foundation stone of a building at Mahadev Netralaya. So RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat will also be there, and the Prime Minister may be going to the RSS headquarters also. You would not like such atmosphere when the Prime Minister reaches there. That's the first thing. Second, what Fadnavis said in the assembly, that Maharashtra is getting a lot of investment, and if we want to get it, we have to maintain law and order. So Fadnavis cannot gamble that. So if you look at this, I do not really see any deliberate attempt on the part of the ruling party or its allies to create any trouble.
So you think things have gone out of his control, or things have just acquired a momentum of their own?
I think they have acquired a momentum of their own. Like Chhaava, of course, he's right. I mean, after the release of the movie, it's a super hit movie and people have been talking about it. Then you had controversial statements from people like Abu Azmi, who said that Aurangzeb was a kind of good administrator. And it spun off after that. We heard Yogi Adityanath saying in UP that, if anybody who says that Aurangzeb is a hero has to be mentally challenged. That somebody who imprisoned his father, I mean, how can you call him a hero? So it's going all over. In Bihar, you heard one MLC, JDU MLC, in fact, praising Aurangzeb, that all that is...
He imprisoned his father, killed two brothers, but this was 17th century. So this was not particularly the nicest bhaichara, family values period of human history, particularly when it came to power, regal power or feudal power.
So as I said, Fadnavis, I don't really see in his government interest, in his own interest, to have any such trouble anywhere in Maharashtra. I mean, he is the chief minister, he is the home minister too. I mean, he wants investment, he would like to rule the law and order to prevail, for those investments to come. He would not like to vitiate the entire atmosphere. But yeah, as you said, these things have taken a momentum of their own, and Chhaava could have contributed to making the atmosphere surcharged and to making this entire divisive political discourse.
Because we've seen videos of spectators, watchers in movie halls, including very young women getting very emotional after watching the movie or during the movie and shouting and screaming and crying, great outbursts of emotion. And some of that could be playing out on the ground as well.
So we can watch for more analysis on this from Mansi, from our colleagues in Mumbai, Mansi and Purva. But what I'm driving at is that could have been the trigger. But the way Fadnavis had been modeling himself as another Narendra Modi, he didn't do that. We heard Narendra Modi talking with that podcaster and saying that, how before 2002, right, there were 250 major riots in Gujarat. After that, no such thing happened. So that's what he has been actually presenting as a success, big success.
So there, this Nagpur riot, fortunately so far, lives have not been lost, but lots of people are injured, lots of cops are injured.
Many cops are injured, yeah.
That is not something that Maharashtra government, Fadnavis's government would have wanted at this time.
Yeah, so as we see, this may suit the BJP politically, but it does not suit the government. It does not suit Fadnavis as chief minister.
But politically right now, there is no election.
There's no election, yeah.
Unless you think it's going to have an impact in Bihar.
Not much, because we heard that Bihar MLC talking about this. There was a political debate also with many of his JDU colleagues distancing themselves from him. So in Bihar, again, you have heard Uddhav Thackeray basically saying that, if you really want to remove that tomb, ask Chandrababu Naidu and Nitish Kumar. Because in these two states, you have strong Muslim population and they are the allies of they are the NDA partners.
Right. So you check with them.
Check with them. So you don't really see these things, even Nitish Kumar wanting any such debate happening in the elections. I mean, run up to the elections. It does not suit him either.
Yeah. So it could be a case of things going out of control in an emotional situation. But once you bring in Aurangzeb in Maharashtra, there's bound to be action. Because all said and done, when Modi government came to power, among the earliest things they did was to change the name of Aurangzeb Road in Delhi. Yeah. It's now APJ Kalam Road.
Another reason Fadnavis or even the BJP would not like it is because there is no solution. So how do you remove that tomb? That's what they're demanding. So to remove that, it's an ASI protected monument. It's a site of national importance. You cannot just remove it. So Union Culture Ministry has to take that monument off that list. Now you do that if Fadnavis comes to the center with the request that, okay, the Culture Ministry should be doing that, the ball will be in the center's court. And after that again...
Once you start that, there are lots of bad guys who've been buried and cremated, etc., across the history.
And this is the last thing Prime Minister Narendra Modi would like to basically handle.
That's right. That's right. Because I've seen tweets from UAE saying that we let them build a mandir here, and they are doing this. So this will not play well with Narendra Modi's current outreach also to the Gulf world.
Yeah. That's why I don't really trust all these conspiracy theories, even after saying that it does suit the BJP.
So when DK says he does not trust a conspiracy theory, then that conspiracy theory really doesn't have much of legs to stand on. So thank you, DK, you made sense of this. However, this is still fascinating. How come a man who lost his entire empire can still evoke such passions?